My name is Corinne, and if you really want to understand how everything fell apart, you have to start with a house I did not even live in. It sounds strange when I say it out loud, but most of the problems in my life were rooted in a home 3 states away. A home I kept standing with money I earned in quiet, exhausting ways. Meanwhile, I lived with my daughter Ava in a rented townhouse in Columbus, Ohio, far from the place that drained me emotionally and financially. My own house was modest, 2 small bedrooms, a living room that always smelled faintly of laundry detergent, and a kitchen with cabinets painted so many times they looked swollen. The backyard was a tiny patch of grass outlined by a crooked wooden fence. Still, despite its flaws, the townhouse belonged to Ava and me. I paid every dollar of rent, every repair bill, and every grocery receipt. That little place, with all its imperfections, was ours. But the house that ruled my life was my parents' home in Savannah, Georgia. I used to love that house. It had a wide front porch where my sister and I once played card games on summer evenings, begging the fireflies to land on our arms. The white shutters were chipped from storms off the coast, and the oak tree out front always dropped branches that my father claimed were good exercise for us to pick up. Inside, the walls were covered in old family photos and mismatched frames that somehow made the place feel warmer. Every major family holiday had always been there: Christmas, Easter, 4th of July cookouts, and especially Thanksgiving, which my mother treated like a national festival. But over the years, the house became less of a family symbol and more of a responsibility that weighed entirely on my shoulders. My parents didn't plan well for retirement. My father, Gregory, worked as an electrician until back pain made it impossible. My mother, Ruth, had been dealing with chronic health problems for years. When the mortgage payments started slipping behind, they panicked. They were terrified of losing the house, and even though I was already juggling life as a single mother, I stepped in. I remember telling myself, they raised me, this is the least I can do. Except it wasn't the least. It became the most. I ended up paying the $1,200 mortgage every month, as reliably as the sunrise. I covered the property insurance. I sent money for repairs when the roof leaked after a heavy storm. When the air conditioner failed during a heat wave, I put $900 on my credit card and told them not to worry. They always thanked me warmly, especially my mother, who said things like, "You're keeping the family together, sweetheart." But no matter how many bills I paid, I never felt like part of the family I was protecting. Raising Ava alone was already a full-time battle. Her father, Dean, had left for Denver, Colorado, when I was 3 months pregnant, promising he would figure himself out and send help when he could. That help came only once. A child support payment for $200 that arrived so early in Ava's life she will never remember it. So every meal, every school uniform, every doctor visit, every birthday gift, I paid for all of it. I worked long hours and still tried to make our home gentle and happy. I wanted Ava to feel love, not strain. But the world does not always care about effort. And my family certainly didn't. As if supporting my parents wasn't enough, I also carried the weight of my younger sister, Lila. She lived in Madison, Wisconsin, where she kept bouncing between majors, jobs, and boyfriends, calling each new start the journey of discovering who I really am. Her journey, unfortunately, seemed permanently tied to my bank account. For 2 years, I paid her college tuition, which came to about $6,000 each semester. I bought her textbooks. I transferred money to her for groceries and car insurance whenever she hit a rough spot, which happened more often than not. The worst blow came when her old sedan broke down near Cleveland, Ohio. She called me crying, telling me she was stranded on the side of the road and didn't know whom else to call. I didn't hesitate. I put $1,100 on my card so she could get the repairs done. A week later, my mother emailed to tell me how grateful they were that I was holding everything together. People use the word grateful so easily when it doesn't cost them anything. Looking back, I wonder why I thought things would ever change. I kept believing that one day, after all the bills and sacrifices, my family would see the truth of who I was. Not a mistake, not a problem, not a single mother who had brought shame onto their carefully controlled image, but a woman who worked hard, who gave more than she should, and who deserved at least a little respect in return. But that respect never came. Over time, I began to feel the small signs of how they really saw me. My mother often talked to me in a tone that was warm but slightly patronizing, as if I were someone whose decisions she tolerated out of politeness. My father made comments about how children need a complete household. which I ignored to avoid arguments. And my sister, well, Lila had always had a jealous streak, especially when any attention shifted away from her. I should have known something was brewing. I should have paid attention to the way she would sometimes look at me with a mix of envy and resentment. Envy because I was independent, resentment because I refused to play helpless. She liked being the center of the family. She liked being the one they worried about. She liked being fragile. And I think she hated that I had learned to survive without needing any of them. Still, I never expected what happened next. I never expected that one day, my sister would call me a family disgrace. I never expected that she would say it loudly and proudly because she wanted to hurt me. I never expected that my parents, the same parents whose home I was saving every single month, would choose her side without a moment of hesitation. But they did. And from that moment forward, nothing in our family would ever be the same. The message that cracked the world beneath my feet arrived on a Wednesday evening, when my guard was down and my heart was tired. I was sitting in a quiet hotel room in Burlington, Vermont, finishing a long day of meetings. My job sounds fancier than it is. I manage accounts for a company that sells handmade wooden furniture across America, and sometimes to Europe. A big part of my job is traveling to different cities, talking to store owners, and making sure they're happy with our shipments. That night, I had kicked off my shoes and was staring at a stack of invoices when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ava was already asleep beside me, curled under a hotel blanket with her stuffed bear tucked against her cheek. She had insisted on coming with me during this trip because her school was on a short break, and I didn't have the heart to leave her behind. The room smelled like cheap hotel coffee and the lemon cleaner they used on the floors. It wasn't home, but it was peaceful in a way my parents' house never was. I reached for my phone without thinking. The screen lit up with a message in our family group chat, which usually only buzzed when my mother wanted to remind us of birthdays or my sister wanted to complain about something trivial. The message was from Lila. You know, Corinne, being a single mom is a family disgrace. Don't bring that mess to Thanksgiving. You're not invited. I froze. At first, I honestly thought it was a joke, a cruel one, but still a joke. I stared at the screen, waiting for her to follow up with something like, "I'm kidding, lighten up." But nothing came. The words just sat there, cold and solid, like a slap that hadn't finished stinging yet. My heart thudded, slow and heavy. I typed back, "What are you talking about?" My hands were shaking as I pressed send, trying to keep my emotions from waking Ava. The reply didn't come from Lila. Instead, a new notification appeared. A fresh email from my parents. Seeing both their names, Gregory and Ruth Hart, lined up together gave me a familiar ache in my throat, the one that came from years of hoping they would finally understand me. I opened the email. "Corinne, Lila tells us you've been very disrespectful in how you talk about her choices and the family. We want to support her completely. We think it's best if you sit out Thanksgiving this year so there's no drama. We hope you understand. Love, Mom and Dad." I read it once, then again, then a third time. Each pass felt worse. There was no space between the lines, no doubt, no hesitation, no attempt to soften the blow. They had decided I was the problem. And what startled me most was not how hurt I felt, but how unsurprised I was. Somewhere deep down, I had always expected something like this, even if I hoped it would never happen. My face grew hot. I sat back against the headboard, staring at nothing. How could they say I was disrespectful? I had spent years swallowing my pride when they made comments about my life. I had listened as they praised Lila's every small accomplishment, while ignoring the fact that I was holding their world together. And all the while I had been paying their bills. The money flashed through my mind like a list written in bold red ink. $1,200 every month for their mortgage, $900 for the air conditioner, $400 for the cleaning service, $800 for the Thanksgiving meal, $120 for the cake, $6,000 per semester for Lila's school, $1,100 for her car repairs. My throat tightened. They had called me a disgrace with their mouths full of food I had paid for. For a long moment, the room felt silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Ava shifted in her sleep, and I looked at her tiny hand curled around her bear. She was the only good thing I had ever fought for without regret. I brushed her hair back gently and whispered so softly she couldn't hear, "You are not a disgrace, and neither am I." In that moment, something inside me hardened, not out of anger but out of clarity. I felt it like a thin, straight line drawing itself through my chest. The truth was simple. I am the reason they can afford to judge me from a house I pay for. I picked up my phone again. My pulse was steady now, strangely calm. I opened the group chat and typed a single sentence. If I am not invited to Thanksgiving, then you don't be there either. I hit send. My fingers hovered over the screen for a second before I locked the phone and placed it face down on the nightstand. The room felt different now, lighter, but also sharpened somehow, as if the air had found edges. I stood from the bed and walked across the room to the window. Outside, Burlington streets were quiet, glowing with a mix of streetlights and early snowfall. Cars were parked neatly along the curb. A couple walked by holding hot drinks, their breath turning into soft clouds in the cold air. Everything looked peaceful, ordinary. I wondered how many of those people had ever been told they were a disgrace by the same family they kept afloat. Back inside the room, Ava sighed softly in her sleep. The glow from the hallway light cast a warm line across the bed. I stared at her a long time, letting her presence settle me. Then I went back to the nightstand, picked up my phone, and opened my banking app. A part of me expected guilt to wash over me, but it didn't. Instead, I felt something that had been missing from my life for years: agency, control, the right to decide where my money, my effort, and my love went. I scrolled until I found the automatic mortgage payment, the same payment that drained me every month without a single thank you. I hovered my thumb over the disable autopay button, waiting for a wave of hesitation to hit me. But it never did. I tapped the screen. A small pop-up appeared. Auto payment canceled. Just like that. The world didn't explode. The sky didn't fall. My parents didn't appear in the doorway demanding explanations. It just ended. I took a slow breath, then closed the banking app. My palms were warm, my chest steady. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family servant. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt awake. This was only the beginning. There were more payments to cancel, more boundaries to draw, more years of being used to untangle from. But that night, in a quiet hotel in Vermont, with my daughter sleeping peacefully beside me, I made the first cut. And once you cut the first string, the rest of the puppet ropes become easier to reach. The morning after the messages, I woke with a heaviness in my chest that felt like someone had stacked books inside my ribs. For a few seconds I forgot where I was. Then the hotel ceiling in Burlington, Vermont came into focus, and everything from the night before rushed back. My sister calling me a disgrace. My parents agreeing. The email telling me not to come to Thanksgiving. I lay still, staring at the soft yellow light creeping around the curtains, and a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't crying. I wasn't doubting myself. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: resolve. Real solid resolve, like a weight shifting off me instead of onto me. Ava stirred beside me, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, can we get pancakes later?" she mumbled. "Yes, baby," I whispered, brushing her hair back. "We'll get pancakes." But inside, I knew something much bigger was about to happen before any pancakes. After breakfast downstairs, I brought Ava to the little kids' play corner the hotel had set up near the lobby. She built a tower with plastic blocks while I sat at a table nearby with my laptop and phone. My hands were steady, my breath even. I felt like someone preparing for surgery. Not panic, just focused. The first thing I opened was my banking app. There it was in bold letters: automatic payment mortgage transfer. $1,200 monthly for years. That line had been as familiar to me as my own name. It was the price I paid to keep my parents comfortable. The price I paid to prove I wasn't as messy as they thought I was. The price I paid to avoid being judged too harshly. But they judged me anyway. I tapped the payment. My thumb hovered for a moment over the cancel button. It felt surreal, like standing on the edge of a high diving board looking down at the water below. But then I thought of my sister's words again: family disgrace, and the email where my parents chose her over me without hesitation. I pressed cancel autopay. A small message popped up confirming it. Recurring payment disabled. Just like that. Years of financial support undone in one tap. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. I felt free. Next, I opened the catering email for the Thanksgiving dinner I had ordered in advance for the gathering at my parents' home in Savannah, Georgia. I had spent $800 on that order, thinking it would give my parents a break and give my mother a perfect, stress-free holiday. I dialed the number and waited. A woman answered in a warm voice. This is Elena at Riverfront Catering. How may I help you? Yes, I said, keeping my tone polite. I need to cancel a Thanksgiving order. It's under the name Corinne Hart. I heard her typing. Of course. I see it here. We can cancel it today, but there is a $100 cancellation fee. The remaining $700 will be refunded to your card. That's fine, I said. Please go ahead. When I hung up, I felt like I had taken a step forward that could never be undone. The kind of step you don't realize you were strong enough to take until your foot leaves the ground. Then I went through my emails again. This time looking for the receipt from the cleaning service I had scheduled to prepare my parents' house for guests. I called them next and canceled that too. Another $400 coming back to me. 3 cuts made. More to go. The hardest call, surprisingly, was to the mechanic in Cleveland, Ohio, the one who had repaired my sister Lila's car. The bill was still being paid in small installments from my credit card. I dialed with a deep breath. A man answered, sounding tired but friendly. Carter Auto Shop. This is Brian. Yes, hi, I said. I need to update a payment plan on the Hart vehicle. The car belongs to my sister, Lila Hart. I won't be covering the remaining balance anymore. She will contact you to pay the rest. He paused. So you're removing yourself from the account? Yes. Effective today. Another pause, longer this time. Understood. I'll note that. She'll have to make arrangements to continue payments. Thank you, I said, and hung up before doubt had a chance to crawl back in. Finally, I opened a new email. This one wasn't for a company or a service. It was for the 3 people who had taken from me for years and offered judgment in return. I wrote, Since I am such a disgrace, my money can't be part of your lives anymore. I am canceling the mortgage support, the Thanksgiving meal, the cleaning, and all future payments for Lila's car and education. You chose to support her completely. That includes her bills. I'll be spending Thanksgiving with people who don't see me as shameful. Corinne. No anger. No extra words. Just the truth. When I hit send, my hands trembled just a little, but not from fear. From release. The calls began the next day. First came my mother, her voice already high and tight before I even said hello. Corinne, you didn't have to do that, she said, her tone sharp with panic. You know we count on that money. Your father is very upset. I closed my eyes. There it was, the truth she would never admit. They didn't see me as a daughter, they saw me as a paycheck. I'm sure he is, I said calmly. But you made your choice. Before she could reply, I ended the call. An hour later, my father called. Corinne, he said in a stern voice I hadn't heard since childhood. This is childish. We're a family. You can't just pull the rug out from under us because your sister said something out of anger. I almost laughed. Out of anger? They had written emails confirming their decision. They had told me to stay away. It's not just what she said. I told him. It's what you chose. You sided with her without even asking for my side of the story. You're overreacting, he snapped. Look, I'll come talk to you. I'll book a flight. We'll fix this. I'll come running if I have to. He said it like a promise, but it sounded like fear. 2 days later, he proved he meant it. There was pounding on my townhouse door in Columbus, Ohio, so loud that my neighbor, Miguel, peeked out through his curtains. When I opened the door, my father looked older than I had ever seen him. His eyes were tired, his shirt wrinkled, as though he had traveled without resting. Corinne, he said, breathless. Please. This has gone far enough. We sat at my small kitchen table. Ava was at school, and the quiet house felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. I'm sorry she said that, my father began. It was wrong to call you a disgrace. But you agreed, I reminded him. You wrote that you support her completely. You told me to stay away. He looked down at his hands. Your mother worries. Lila is fragile. We wanted her to feel supported. And I'm what? I asked. A machine? A wallet? The one you don't have to worry about. He didn't answer. I've paid for your house, I continued. For her school. For her car. For your holidays. All while raising my child alone. You don't get to enjoy my money and call my life shameful. Corinne, please, he whispered. I'm sorry. I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying to fix this. I shook my head. You're sorry the money is gone, I said softly. Not sorry for how you all treated me. He reached for my hand. I pulled mine back. I'm done, I said. The payments, the rescuing, all of it. For the first time in my life, my father had nothing to say. And for the first time in my life, I felt strong. Thanksgiving that year did not look anything like the ones I grew up with, but it was the first one that truly felt like it belonged to me. After everything that had happened, the messages, the blame, the guilt pushed onto me like a coat I never asked to wear, I needed silence. I needed space. I needed distance from the people who claimed to love me but treated me like a walking bank account. So I stayed home in Columbus, Ohio, in the small townhouse Ava and I shared. The one with peeling paint and a narrow kitchen but a warmth that was ours alone. I decided early in the morning that I wouldn't allow sadness to take over the day. I wanted to show Ava that love doesn't disappear when people turn their backs on you. So I went to the grocery store and bought a small turkey for $35, a bag of potatoes for $6, green beans, butter, and a pumpkin pie from the bakery section for $12. The whole cart, full enough to feed us and a few guests, cost less than the deposit I had once paid for a grand Thanksgiving feast in Savannah. This time, every dollar went towards something that would genuinely bring joy, not obligation. I invited my neighbor Miguel, who lived 3 doors down and had no family nearby. I also asked my coworker Harper, who had recently moved from Richmond, Virginia, and admitted she didn't want to spend her first holiday in Ohio alone. Harper arrived with warm cornbread wrapped in foil, and Miguel showed up carrying sparkling apple cider and a tray of roasted vegetables that filled the room with garlic and rosemary. Ava helped me set the table. We didn't have fancy plates, just our everyday mismatched ones, but she made everything feel special. She folded index cards into little triangles and wrote each person's name in big, uneven letters. She placed mine at the head of the table and drew a lopsided heart on it. "Mom," she asked softly as she slid her card into place, "why aren't we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house this year?" I knelt beside her so we were eye level. "Sometimes," I said gently, "grown-ups forget how to be kind, and until they remember, we spend our time with people who treat us with respect." She blinked up at me. "Is that why we bought our turkey here instead of going there?" "Yes," I said, smoothing her hair. "And you know what? I like this turkey better already." She grinned, accepting my answer in that pure way children do, unbothered by the storm happening outside her small world. The meal was simple, but the laughter around the table made it feel rich. We toasted with apple cider. Miguel joked about his cooking disasters. Harper told stories about adjusting to Ohio weather, and Ava's eyes sparkled as she listened, hands wrapped around her cup. For the first time in years, Thanksgiving didn't feel heavy. It felt safe. My parents and Lila did message throughout the day. At first, the tone was sharp. "You're tearing this family apart." Then, as the hours passed and they realized I wasn't responding, the tone softened. "We miss you and Ava. Can we talk?" I read each message quietly, my chest tightening a little. But I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. I needed time to understand who I was without carrying their weight. I needed to breathe without them pulling at my lungs. Later that evening, after Miguel and Harper left and Ava was in bed, I stood alone in the kitchen washing dishes. The room felt peaceful, humming with a calm I had never known during holidays before. When I finally sat down, I opened my banking app. The $700 refund from the canceled catering had arrived. The cleaning service refund too. The mortgage draft that usually sat like a shadow waiting for payday was gone from the list. For the first time in a long time, my bank account didn't make me feel afraid. It made me feel steady. The dollars I earned now went first to Ava and me, our rent, our food, our future. I had even started a small savings account with $300 in it. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of something that truly belonged to us. Maybe someday it would grow into a down payment for a house of our own. Not a house I was rescuing for others, but one I built for my daughter. That night I stood at the window and looked out at the quiet street. Cars lined the curb. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Someone's television flickered blue against a curtain. Nothing about it was grand, but everything about it was mine. I thought of all the women across America. In Toledo, Omaha, Jacksonville, and every city I'd never seen. Raising kids alone, paying bills alone, making impossible things possible every day. Women labeled mistakes, burdens, disgraces, even as they carried their families higher than anyone realized. I wasn't a disgrace. I was a woman who had paid for everyone else's life and finally decided to pay for her own. Maybe one day my parents and Lila would understand. Maybe they would show up with real apologies instead of fear over lost money. If that day ever came, I would listen with respect. But I would never again return to being their silent wallet. Until then, I will keep writing my own story. I will keep choosing myself. I will keep building holidays that feel peaceful, honest, and full of love. And if anyone thinks that is shameful, they can say it from a house they pay for on their own.